best answer. But all this fucking guessing out loud about what the conspiracy is, I'm begging you, please, shut the fuck up. You're gonna make everybody sick that way. You can say I feel, you can say I think or I suspect, or it looks to me like, but please, please stop saying you know. Because in times like this, the last person... But here's what I think. Somehow this country went wrong. In 1910, I narrowed it down to a specific dude. It has something to do, and think about what I say later, not now. It has something to do with Jack Johnson. First black heavyweight champion of the world. And the heavyweight championship, to this day, is the most prestigious title in sports. But in 1908, only white fighters had that distinction. Not because black fighters weren't good enough, but because no white fighter would give any black person the opportunity to lay their hands on them. And a guy named Tommy Burns became heavyweight champion. And Tommy Burns was an anomaly. He was Canadian. And he said, I am the heavyweight champion. He said, I am not the champion of Canada. I am not the champion of white men. I am the heavyweight champion of the world. And I will defend my championship against all comers. And boy, Jack Johnson got the opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world, not from an American like he was, but from a Canadian. Now, you think that Americans would root for Jack Johnson because he was an American. No, this nigga was blacker than Wesley Snipes. Tommy Burns was at that point above him, and you know, he beat the fuck out of Tommy Burns. In Sydney, Australia. And all the white fighters in America were like, you see what we mean? Fighting those goddamn dirty fighting monkeys. Before Tommy Burns, the heavyweight champion, had retired, there was a man named Jim Jeffries. And everyone said, Jack Johnson's not the real champion. They said, Jim Jeffries is a real champion. And it's a good thing he's not fighting him. He'll beat your black ass, Jack Johnson. So Jack Johnson called out Jim Jeffries. It happened first in London. Jim Jeffries was in a parade in London, and he said, I say, old boy, I sure would like to give you a wallop. And Jim Jeffries just looking at him like, the fuck? And then Jim Jeffries was in a parade in Sydney, Australia, and Jack Johnson stepped out of the crowd again. I say, old boy, I sure do want to give you the old one, too. Jim Jeffries was looking like, how does this nigga have a passport? Again, this was 1910. The hallmark of Jack Johnson's character was audacity. There's a story about him that's in line. And the police pulled Jack Johnson's black ass over. You know, this was 1910. He must have been flying 13, 14 miles an hour. The police stopped him. The police said, it costs $200 for a nigger to speed on our roads down here. Back then, $200 was like getting a $50,000 ticket. This nigga Jack Johnson didn't hesitate. He gave him $400. He said, I'm coming back this way. After months of persistence against Jim Jeffries on the 4th of July, this is where the phrase, the Great White Hope, came from. They were dying to find any white man that could put this nigga in his place. I'll tell you what, on the 4th of July, Jim Jeffries was not the guy. Jack Johnson fucked his ass up. And Jack Johnson did what they call in boxing carried the fight, which means he could have knocked him out in the early rounds, but he didn't want to die. He wanted to make it look good, but when he got sick of it, because back then it wasn't no like 15-round fights, niggas just fought till they couldn't fight anymore. And when Jack Johnson got bored, put him away off, because they didn't want any imagery of this nigga knocking out their hope. And on July 5th, all over the United States, there were riots, white riots, where they killed many black people to make sure that the rest of these niggas knew their place. Because Jack Johnson was the first black person to physically confront the color line and win. And here's the punchline. He didn't just leave the arena with his life. Jack Johnson had a very particular proclivity. Talk about it. You see, Jack Johnson loved fucking white women. Almost exclusively, he would fuck white women. And man, the audacity of this nigga beating white men up and fucking their bitches. The black boxing world was elated. And every great black fighter celebrated Jack Johnson. And they came to Jack Johnson, they said, Jack, congratulations, can I get a title fight? And Jack Johnson, just like his white predecessors, said, well, I don't fight black fighters. I'm in the business of beating up white guys. After another, they lined up the great white hopes, and Jack Johnson would vanquish them all. In fact, it took an act of Congress to stop him. Congressman named Mann from Illinois came up with an act called the Mann Act. The Mann Act is the law that says it is illegal to take a woman across state lines for the purposes of debauchery. And my line of work, gotta know shit like that. Jack Johnson got tried, prosecuted, convicted of the Mann Act, fled the country, was on the run for years in the ruin. This is one of my favorite quotes that any American ever said. He said, I risked everything for my pleasure. You know, having freedom is one thing. Not having freedom is another thing. But using freedom that you don't have takes an enormous amount of courage, no matter how selfish you are with it. And Jack Johnson is an American riddle that we've got to solve. Him at the National Harbor, and I wasn't performing. I was at a Stevie Wonder show, and Stevie Wonder didn't know I was there. I was on the side stage. I got there late. He was already doing the show. And this was a very special night. It was the night before Aretha Franklin's funeral. And Aretha Franklin was a very special person to me. The first time I ever played Radio City, she gave me a job as her opening act. Mean boss, but great artist. He started to sing a medley of all the songs that he had ever written for Aretha Franklin. And man, I got to tell you, it was a lot. Huge hits that I didn't even know he wrote. And the crowd was grooving and celebrating her life. And just suddenly, in the middle of it, Stevie broke down crying, put his head down on the piano, and I could hear him sob. And I was drunk. And it hurts a man to hear another man cry. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, I must go to him. And I just walked out on stage. And you know, it was home. Like when the crowd saw. And I sat down next to him at the piano and I go, Steve, it's me. And then he smiled real big and we started cracking jokes and singing songs. And then after the show, we were backstage and he asked me, He said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, I'm gonna go fly to Detroit with you. Pay my respects to Miss Franklin. And he said, no. That's the way. And Stevie said, I need you to do me a favor. He said, John McCain is laying in state at the Capitol. He said, I want you to go pay our respects to him. And I said, nigga, I would much rather go to Detroit with you. And then Stevie gave me that look. He just looked like this, like, he didn't even know I was all the way over here, didn't he? So I went. He just told me to do that I won't do is stop smoking. That I won't do yet. But I did it. I waited in line, and then I got all the way up to Senator McCain's casket, and I was just like, Stevie Wonder sent me. Goodbye, nigga. And I just walked off. That's what he wanted us. I did it. A lot of people don't know this, but people from Washington know this, who are my age. A lot of people don't know that Martin Luther King, unlike Charlie Kirk, had a harder time being remembered. Today is a holiday is because the King family and Stevie Wonder lobbied very hard and very long for that holiday. People forget that what they call Black Happy Birthday, the Stevie Wonder Happy Birthday, was a protest song about making the King holiday a reality. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. And it was so effective. Finally, the Senate voted on it. 99 out of, except for one, John McCain. The guy that Stevie sent me to say goodbye to. What a great man Stevie Wonder is. How much this country could learn from a man like that. John McCain, God bless him, he got himself in a pickle for that vote, but it came back to get his ass years later. Years later, he was running for president and had to run against the first nigga to ever get a party nomination. And Barack Obama got that nomination. And of all the votes in McCain's long career as a senator, that vote against that King holiday had never haunted him like it did at that time. So how did he counter that? I'll tell you what he did. If you remember, John McCain sponsored a bill to pardon Jack Johnson posthumously of the Mann Act. Yes, he did sponsor that bill to pardon Jack Johnson of the Mann Act. The Mann Act is precisely the law that Sean's Unstoppable Nigger Act. Yeah, something else was going on, but I don't know. Are you guys bored? Okay, I'm going to keep going. There's more. I hate conspiracy theories, but I'll tell you one about, well, and this is not even a theory. This part I know is a fact. Did you know when I left D.C. and moved to New York in the 90s, that New York City Police Department had a hip-hop police task force? Did you know that? And this task force would follow anybody that was involved in hip-hop culture around. Not just rappers, drug dealers, because they thought that it was connected somehow. Even young comedians like me. Anybody that was just on that scene, they knew who everybody was and what everybody was doing. And Back in those days, I used to go to nightclubs, but sometimes I go to a club and the lights would be a little bit different. And I didn't notice, but the OGs would pull me aside and be like, careful in the club, nigga. But the lighting was strange because the party was under surveillance. And they were just telling me to watch my back. And, you know, I wasn't doing anything wrong anyway, nigga, just having a good time. Now, did you know that that task force was invented originally to follow just two people around? Those people was a guy named Christopher Wallace, a.k.a. the Notorious B.I.G., and Sean P. Diddy Combs. Now, why is that this nigga has been under surveillance for at least 30 years? But just now, just doing all that, I bet you they seen him doing it for a long time. But why now? I don't know. It was strange in this case. Nobody called the police, except for Kid Cudi. And everybody called Kid Cudi a snitch. But he wasn't a snitch. A snitch is when two niggas do crime together and one of them gets caught and tells on the other one to get himself out of the trouble. Kid Cudi was violated by Puff. He alleged that Puff blew up his motherfucking Porsche with a Molotov cocktail and didn't stop there. He said he then alleged that... Oh, nigga, I'd have been furious. Kid Cudi said, I can't prove that he opened the gifts or nothing, but I came in the house and he was in there and the gifts was open and that nigga was just like, Merry Christmas, Playboy. So what was Kid Cudi supposed to do? He only got two choices. Either A, you're gonna have to do some gangster shit to this nigga that he's gonna have a hard time proving. Or if you're not built like that, and I do not believe that Kid Cudi is built like that, your last option is B. I, on the other hand, I'm built like that. If this nigga fuck my family's Christmas up, you better believe I'm gonna make him suffer for that shit. And niggas are gonna come up to me and tell me all about it and not even know I did it. Oh my God, Dave. Oh, did you hear what happened to Puffy? Oh my God, no. What happened? He was jogging by himself in Topanga Canyon. A falcon came out of nowhere and killed this nigga. Oh my God. I love hip hop music. I love many of the people that make that music. They taught me things and showed me things that I'd never seen for myself. Good things. For example, I was in Atlanta once. I'm almost done. Hang in there, champ. I was in Atlanta, and a rapper named T.I. called me up. Now, at this time, I didn't know him well. I know him better now, but I knew him well enough that he'd had my phone number. And then nigga called me up. He was like, Dave, I heard you was in my city. I said, fuck yeah, nigga, let's go. He said, meet me downstairs in your hotel valet. So I went downstairs. I thought he was fucking around, but when I went down there, he was outside in the valet, sitting in a purple Phantom. This car must have been $1.5 million. Beautiful purple color with ivory white seats. It's the kind of car that you gotta have a chauffeur to drive, but for some reason, this nigga was driving it himself. And I didn't ask no questions. I just jumped in the car, and man, he showed me Atlanta. Everything. Outkast and them started rapping over there, and Future used to play in the playground over here, and the king grew up in that house right there, and he raised his children over here, and that's the church he preached in over there. And then we stopped at a red light, and these little black kids rushed the car from my side of the intersection with water bottles. These kids in Atlanta, if you know, they're called the water boys. Their whole hustle is they sell water to people who are stuck in that hot Atlanta traffic. I didn't know that. I just saw these young niggas running up on the car, so I locked the door like, fuck that. But T.I. rolled his window down, started giving the kids orders. Slow down, don't just run up on somebody's car. You don't know what they got in there. And smile so you look less threatening. And remember your manners. Yes, sir, no ma'am, please, thank you. That'll keep you alive. And keep that condensation on that water so it looks refreshing and delicious. And then that kid realized that he was talking to a legend. He said, oh my God. He said, thanks, T.I., and held his hand out for some money. And that nigga T.I. looked at him and said, I done gave you the game, and rolled up the window and drove away. That night, I did my show, and when I got off stage, T.I. was backstage with a friend of his that I didn't know. I just knew his friend was somebody because everyone was acting all excited that he was back there. So I asked him, I go, yo, Tip, who's your man? And he's like, oh, that right there? He goes, that there is the future of hip hop. And I was like, nigga, will you just calm down? So then I asked the dude, I said, yo, my man, I said, what's your name? And the dude looked over, he said, I'm Nipsey. I'm not gonna go all into it, but I gotta tell you, that night, me and T.I. and Nipsey went out, and we had a fucking blast. Good time, not a freak-off fun, but fun. So much so that when I got home from the road, and my wife always asked me, she goes, Dave, how was your trip? Normally I'm just like, it was good. But this time I was like, babe, I met the coolest nigga. I said, this nigga's younger than me, but it's like he's older than me. And she's like, what? She goes, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know, bitch. She's like, I told her all about Nipsey. And what was funny about it is years later, I saw Nipsey's widow, and she pulled me aside. I'd never met her. And she said, I just want to tell you that my husband loved you. She said, he said he met you in Atlanta, and you had a wonderful time. I said, boy, that's fucking crazy. We sure did. Not long after I met Nipsey, I was in L.A. doing a show. And then after the show, I got a text from a guy that says, I'm at a party you need to be at. And I was like, I'm going to go to bed. And he's like, no, nigga, you have to come to this party. So I'm thinking this must be the freak off, finally. And the party was at a place that I'd been to a million times, so I wasn't excited about being in that place. But when I walked in, it just was different. It was popping. And it turns out that the party was for Nipsey. Nipsey had been nominated for Rap Album of the Year, and everyone that he would have ever respected was at the party. T.I. was there, Snoop was there, Jay-Z was there, Puffy, before we knew he did all that stuff, was there. I was there, on and on and on. And as good as the party was, when I was partying, I was having fun, but I had a pit in my stomach because it reminded me of the 90s. And you can believe me or you cannot, the eye lights up. I just felt like, man, this party's under surveillance, but I didn't think too much of it. And then I went back home to Ohio, and I was taking a nap, and my wife shook me awake, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, David. I said, what's going on with you? She said, your friend is dead. And I'm old now, so I'm like, bitch, you're going to have to be more specific than that. I know niggas with gout. But it was Nipsey. And this is why I feel for Charlie Kirk's fans, because I know what it's like to see, oh my God. It's so hard to accept that. And if you looked on the internet and saw all those terrible videos, because there was a very gory video of Nipsey's murder too. And then I looked in the comment section, and the internet was doing what it does, and everyone was coming up with one conspiracy theory after another. But the one that I kept seeing the most involved a holistic doctor in New York City. Have you heard it? It's a doctor named Dr. Sebi. A black holistic doctor in New York named Dr. Sebi claimed that he cured 2 people of AIDS and HIV holistically. And at that time, that was an illegal claim to make in the United States because of the FDA. So the federal government took Dr. Sebi to court, and New York State took Dr. Sebi to court. And Dr. Sebi beat both cases. And Nipsey Hussle, unbeknownst to many, was making a documentary. He was producing it about Dr. Sebi's work and his life. To keep that information from you and I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I'll tell you something that I do know. The greatest comedian I've ever seen with my own eyes is Charlie Barnett. Charlie Barnett, a New York street comedy legend. He only did comedy on the streets, and I was lucky enough to meet him. He was a mentor of mine. Charlie Barnett was so good at performing on the streets that from the streets, he booked himself a job on Saturday Night Live and replaced him with Eddie Murphy. Oh, that could have been beautiful. But you gotta be able to read to do Saturday Night Live. I know y'all saw Bad Bunny last week. I'm not knocking him, and that nigga's reading, you know what I mean? Charlie Barnett wasn't deterred. He kept pushing. And he went on to do movies like DC Cab, which is where I first saw him. He used to be on Miami Vice. This motherfucker became a star in his own right. But the thing that kept derailing him is that Charlie was a terrible drug addict. He learned how to do street comedy from a guy named Swami X, and Swami X didn't just teach him how to do comedy, he taught him how to get high, and Charlie never could shake it. And when Charlie mentored me, even though he was a terrible drug addict, I never saw him high. He never wanted to do to me what Swami did to him. He made sure I understood that cocaine is just not for you, even though those bitches are prettier than them ugly weed bitches you be hanging out. One night, I saw Charlie in a comedy club, and he looked terrible. And this guy would avoid me if he was getting high. And he didn't say anything. And I said, "Are you high?" And he laughed. He said, "No, nigga, I'm not high." He said, "I'm dying." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm dying. I have AIDS, and I'm dying." Now, I must have been 18 or 19. I never met nobody that I knew of that had AIDS, but I gotta tell you, that shit had me shook. And then I started thinking of all his jokes, and he was hinting at it for years. The nigga used to have a joke where he said, "I took an AIDS test yesterday, I got a 65. He was on stage at the Apollo, and he told the crowd, "There's good and bad and everything." And the crowd was like, "Yeah." He said, "So what's good about crack?" And, everybody in Harlem was like, "Nothing." And he said, "Shit, crack brought the price of pussy down to $5. But when he said he had AIDS, I was so shocked that I looked at him to see if he was joking. And I knew, I said, he's serious. And I said, "Fuck that shit." He said, "What you mean?" I said, "You're not gonna die around me, nigga. That's not you." To Dr. Sebi, this is a fact. And Dr. Sebi treated Charlie Barnett for 3 months. This is a crazy story. I could make a whole movie about it. It's a long story, so I'll spare you. But the point of the story is, Charlie died of AIDS. DC, no matter how much this government or anyone else puts pressure on you, keep your wits about you. I'm here to take care of each other, and we will wait this orange nigga out. The fear that I have for myself that I need you to protect me from is co-option. My voice has become more powerful than I intended it to be. And I cannot let these niggas do me like Charlie Kirk, or even worse than that,